Thank you, Mark. Thank you to Andrew for making our sit possible today and to Rachel for holding our tech space. Grateful to be in the middle of the beginning of the book of the Midbar, book of Numbers, in our weekly Torah reading. And today we read in Parshat Bahalotcha about the crafting of the menorah for the Mishkan, for our dwelling place in the wilderness. So this seven-branched menorah candelabra was fabulously difficult to create. In the book of Exodus, there are no less than 10 verses that recount God's telling Moses about this intricate design. It has to be gold, there's cups for oil, there's, of course, seven branches, they're almond-shaped, almond blossom-shaped cups. And the hardest thing about making this menorah is that it has to be made according to the Torah in one piece of metal, from the thick branches to the fine flower-like detail. So I'm gonna be sharing, and Rachel's gonna share it in just a second, but I just want to lift up something that we find in the text. The Torah uses the word miksha over and over again. And miksha means to be hammered. But this one piece wonder that's how it's crafted, right? It's like hammered here, hammered there, but the whole time being complete in one piece, which we can understand why Moses would have such a heck of a time making this menorah of all the vessels that were included in the Mishkan. So thank you to Rachel for sharing our text, and I'll go ahead and be reading that for those people who don't have access to the screen share. So one of our verses from the Parsha reads, "When you draw up the lamp wicks toward the front of the lampstand, let the seven lamp wicks give light." Aaron did this. And then we read that this was the constructed pattern of the lampstand. Hammered work, there's our word, miksha, of gold. Even up to its stem, up to its petals, here's a repetition of that again, it was hammered work. The Torah really wants us to get this word, miksha, and thus the lampstand was made. So the Midrash, our volume of the place that we go for stories and deeper meaning about the Torah, the words in the Torah. Here I've included a text from Midrash Rabbah on our verse, and it says, Miksha, this Hebrew word meaning hammered work, implies or can be read instead ma kasha. So what the rabbis are doing here is kind of parsing the word differently, changing out some vowels. And instead of it reading hammered work, it's going to now read how difficult, as in how difficult it is to make this menorah. Moses was greatly worked up about this, more than making any of the other vessels for the Mishkan. The Midrash continues, seeing that Moses found it so difficult, the Holy One said to Moses, "Take a measure of gold, cast it into the furnace, take it out again, and the lampstand will assume shape of its own accord." Moses hit the gold with a hammer, and the lampstand did just that. It took shape of its own accord. The Holy One said to Moses, "If you, as in you all, Israel, will take care to kindle lights before me, I will protect your souls. For souls are likened to a lamp. As it says, the spirit of a human being is the lamp of God." This is a beautiful verse from the book of Proverbs. And our Torah portion says, "When you raise up the lamp wicks." So thank you, Rachel. You can go ahead and take the screen share down. So miksha, makasha, right? Something that is so difficult and ornate, hammered gold work, all one piece, can be makasha, so difficult. And I take those words into my own life, and use them as a kind of a springboard for reflecting what are the things that I'm struggling with in my own life? What are the things that I'm trying to make one piece of complete hammered gold, a beautiful work of art, functioning and also able to hold light? What are the things that are hard for me in doing this? And bringing that into our sit, how difficult it is to be truly aware as we walk through our lives, right? To take time like this to stop what we're doing and to say, we're going to attend to what is right here in front of me, even in light of how difficult the world can be. So I love this idea that when we read the opening words of the parsha, that we raise up the lamps. The Midrash is telling us that that is meaning that we're going to kindle the lights of our soul. And when something is bakasha, when something is biksha, it is all one piece. When something is difficult to craft and create, one of the tools that we have at our disposal is to raise those lamps, to light the wicks, and to kindle the flame of our soul so that we have the strength to face that which is difficult in our lives. So that is my invitation to you as we enter the sit. As our dear teacher, Rabbi Jordan Ben-Dat Appel, is fond of saying, don't pick the hardest thing, right? So as we enter into the sit and we're thinking, where do I find ma kasha in my life? Don't pick the hardest thing, right? Maybe something coming to mind of a difficulty that is a struggle, but not the greatest struggle you're facing right now. To think about how that might percolate through our bodies, how we can become aware of that in a way to befriend it, to bring it in, to shine a little light on it, to add a little breath, add a little presence, to welcome it into our being, to know that we're human and that to struggle, just like Moses did, is human. It's part of our existence. So I invite you into taking your seat, feeling the connection of your body with a surface. It might be under your tush, it might be your feet on the floor, might be your hips or back on a mat. And to invite that breath into this vessel. To feel the expansion wherever it's possible to feel expansion. And as we enter into some quiet together, I'm going to punctuate our sit today with a little bit of guidance, a little bit of an invitation to fill the light into our bodies. So we'll sit for about 12 minutes or so, but every few minutes I'm just going to invite you into bringing that light into a different part of your body, just like our menorah was light filled. Feeling the miracle of our toes, kind of like branches of a menorah. And invite the light all the way down into those toes. inviting the warmth, the gold color, fluidity. As our toes fill up with that honey colored light, might start coursing back toward the arch of our feet, the heels, the edges of the heels. Miraculous in their ability to help us stand like the menorah stood. The lights coming up toward our ankles. The ability of this joint to move our foot, reposition our body. Make us flexible and yet aware perhaps of our own limitations as well. You might feel the warmth coming up the calf, up the shin, toward our kneecaps. Over the top of those knees into one of the strongest parts of our bodies, thighs, femur, our hamstrings, lighting it up with warmth. Maybe that light can soothe some of our aches and pains that we might counter along the way. Ma kasha. It's not easy. The joint of our hips, the bowl of our pelvis. The release of light we might feel when and if our abdominal muscles can release into that bowl at the base of our hips. This pelvis, this bowl of sorts that sits atop the branches of the menorah, perhaps. The light in our sacrum, our belly, The light that pours through our ribs. And the sunshine that comes up through our spine. Giving spacious light. Our sternum, our armpits. As the light rolls down into those arms, through the shoulders, the bursa sacs, the elbows, and into each of our 10 fingers. Warmth. The miracle of these arm branches that rotate and twist and lift and extend. All within our own limitations, but yet are still miracles in and of themselves. And the light gently cascades down our backs, our upper back, our scapula, softening maybe those tight knots. Makasha. Those things that we carry because things are not always so easy. And may the light softly rise into our necks. The small bones in our ears, our jaw. Across our cheekbones, smile muscles. The place where we are sharing our luminosity with the world, our panim, faces. And the light is coming now toward our scalps, our hair follicles, emanating outward, upward. We're sharing it with those around us or in our world. And we're doing it all despite makasha, how difficult it is sometimes. So we sit with the light. You might feel that light more intensely in one place in your body than in another place, in a concentrated way. In a way that enables you to carry this light with you past this gathering of this sacred community out into your life. That it may illuminate for you, Ma Kasha, what is challenging right now? What might benefit from having a little bit of light shed on it? And where might we release, as Moses did by throwing the gold in the fire, and trusting that it might just come out whole, fine and beautiful, just as it could only be. Where might we exert a little less effort in creating that masterpiece of life? May this week of reading this Torah portion about light support us in our journey and in our acceptance of Makasha, that sometimes things are hard, and to let a little light into our path. As we turn towards Mourner's Kaddish in just a moment, I invite you to take in some of the light from the screen, the panim of our community, the beautiful faces, the names, the light that is right here with us.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Susan Leider, guiding us so beautifully again today. So much appreciation. And friends, let's seal that beautiful practice as we do each day. If you're in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the Mourner's Kaddish, you're welcome to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, we invite you to stay present to support those who are. And if you are reciting Kaddish, you're invited to join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ya'amad, Yivrach, V'yikol, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'mechon, V'chayeh D'chol Beit Yisrael, Yolat Bizman Kariv, Elu, Amen. Hey Shmei Rabba Mevarach, Lam Lame Amaya, Barach, Tabach, V'yipa'ar, V'yitraman, V'yinaseh, Hadar, V'yitalel, V'yithalal, Sheyeh D'kudsha, Elam, Berchata, V'shirata, Mishpachata v'nechamata, everyone ba'alma, v'imru, Shlama Rabba Mishmaya, Chachayim Aleinu Al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mama, V'yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'yachol Yisrael, V'yakol Yosei Tevel, V'imru.
Amen.
Harmony in the
Amen.
Spirit, peace to us. To always.
Friends, thanks so much for joining us for today's practice. And if you're leaving us now, hope you'll join us tomorrow or any day the rest of the week. We'll be led tomorrow by Cantor Care Spencer Shapiro, Rabbi Robin Damsky on Thursday, and Rabbi Dorothy Richmond will lead us to sit together into Shabbat on Friday. So hope you can join us for any or all of those sessions. And of course, all the sessions are live streamed on our YouTube channel and the recordings are posted there. So please avail yourself of the opportunity if you're not able to join us live to use that to help you support you in your practice. And you are invited, as always, to stay on for conversation with today's teacher, Rabbi Susan Leider. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please put it in the chat and write question all in caps, and I'll try to work your question into our conversation. You can also just share in the chat your any reflections on your experience with today's practice and teaching. And if anyone happen to be here for the first time today, please let us know that as well, so we can welcome you officially. Susan, thank you so much. I do love these Torah portions in the Book of Numbers, Bamidbar, in part because it was my own bar mitzvah parsha. It's also my kids, bar bat mitzvah parsha this week, and so much great narrative in it that we get into in a little bit. But I never really heard that. I never knew that midrash about the word miksha and makasha. And I loved the paradox that you brought in. I can't remember, last Friday feels like a long time ago, so I barely remember what we talked about last Friday, but sometime last week we were talking about paradoxes. And the paradox of the challenge of creating the menorah, which that text describes Moshe being more stressed out about that aspect of the implements for the sanctuary than anything else. The combination of challenge, feeling challenged, something's hard, but also the comfort of the light and the reassurance that is being attended to really felt like that's the practice we need right now. It was it's such a good practice for this moment when so many things feel so hard for various reasons for different people. To have this idea that the menorah represents the reality of challenge and also the capacity to respond to that challenge by being able to draw on resources within us. I thought it was really helpful. I loved the guided, the kind of the body scan and imagining our bodies as a menorah was really, really powerful. Oh, hi, Ellen. Welcome, first timer. Glad to have you. So I wanted to just throw that back to you a little bit about whenever something seems paradoxical, it always strikes me that there's truth to it. So how do you how's that land for you in terms of that paradox?
As usual, Mark, your minute by minute reflections are always so great and provocative for me and for all of us. I decided to do the body scan at the last minute. That was not part of my plan today. And all of a sudden, just I guess before we started, for those of you who've been on sits that I've led before, I tend to not do guided practice. We have such a short period of time together that sometimes I feel like that 12 minutes of quiet is such a gift. But then just toward the end of the teaching, this is just natural. It's time to fill up with some light.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it's I think the paradox of if we mess this thing up, is our light still going to be good? Right? Like if this is the vessel for light and we're trying to make the vessel for light, what do we do when we're struggling or fall short or it doesn't turn out the way that we expected, right?
Mhm.
Um, and, I think there's some clues in the text for that. Some are here, some are in other places, but one of them lies, and I didn't provide the Hebrew for the Midrash piece, but it's transliterated that there's this other text that the author of the Midrash pulls in from Exodus where it says, of hammered work, it shall be made.
Mhm.
It's nifal in Hebrew, right? It's a passive
Passive. Yep.
structure of the verb. In other words, the times that we think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to muscle through, where are some times when I need a little more ta'aseh, it will be made, right? And so I feel like,
Can I just put a pause, hit pause there for a second? Because I
yeah,
think that's a really, just to catch that nuance is really important, and make sure that I'm hearing you right. Maybe there's yet another paradox that, we're creating the menorah, but you're suggesting that the language in Exodus says that it shall be made, meaning, yeah, we're putting effort, but there's something that it is coming to fruition from something beyond ourselves. We're not making it happen, even though there's effort required. And there's another paradox there, like who's making this menorah, right?
right.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm
Right,
sorry.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think that's why the voice of the Midrash says, listen, Moses, just don't sweat this. Take some gold, throw it in the furnace, and it's going to come out. Tasa. So, and there is that, like, at what point are we in charge and actually like grabbing something and guiding it to fruition? And at what point are we giving over and throwing it into the furnace and saying, it's going to come out? I'm trusting. That is a huge paradox, right? And it's a bechira point. It's a choice. Like at what point do we choose to take one path or the other, and at what moment to view how we're approaching something
Hmm.
or how we're going to get through something or connect or produce something
Right.
or
So
see
this is,
something produced.
yeah. So this is paradoxical effort and surrender at the same time,
Mhm.
which is no way around it. That's really such a essential spiritual practice, to have both at the same time. The other paradox for the menorah is this, and you mentioned this, that it's a seven branched candelabrum. And by the way, to distinguish it between the Chanukiah, which is eight branched, but this is the seven branched one, which in itself kind of represents diversity. And today, as you guided us through our bodies, you sort of said that in considering our bodies as a menorah, we have all these different parts, right? But it's always really so important that it's out of a single block of gold. It's not like different pieces that are welded together or put together in some way. It has to be an organic diversity that grows out of a oneness, which is I think, a fundamental Jewish teaching in
Mm,
Jewish spirituality, which is kind of the converse of e pluribus unum, out of many one. For from a Jewish spiritual perspective, it's pluribus out of unum, one, many out of
mm,
one. And I always feel like that's something that's, but so anyway, so like, yes, we have different parts of our body. And like you pointed out, like it was interesting to think about the toes as branches of the menorah. And then I started thinking about my fingers as branches of the menorah, or like different parts of the face as different branches of the menorah. But it's still one body, right? And also true for this community, right? Because in a sense, we were all creating a single menorah here, and we all represent a branch on it as well, different facet of the single thing. Amy's asking, could you speak to the difference between this midrash and the story about Moses asking Aaron about making the golden calf? Oh, this is really interesting, actually, right? Because where Aaron's response to Moses is, "Well, I just threw the gold in the fire, and out came this calf." That's a really good notice,
Oh,
really good noticing, Amy, that this is kind of a midrash is kind of a counter to that, right? This is kind of a sacred, that's a idolatrous, you know, fabrication by Aaron to explain the golden calf, whereas this is a very different thing.
that's that's marvelous
Yeah.
to juxtapose these two things and to ask and stories and to ask ourselves what motivates us to throw something into the fire or the furnace, right? And how does that impact whether that's the right thing to do in that moment, right? Are we
Mhm.
running away from something? Are we giving into fear? Or are we saying, I need support and help? And I need to see the bounds of my own control. I
Mhm.
don't have answers to any of those things,
Yeah.
but I think juxtaposing, I really appreciate you lifting that up. That's an amazing,
Yes. Really good.
amazing.
Amy, beautiful. Couple other questions or just observations which just underscore, I think, that point. Susan wrote, is the throwing it into the fire actually the co-creating we do with Hashem, with the divine, in whatever we create? We need to do our part, also be mindful. We're always in partnership, collaboration with our higher source. I think yes. And then Esther read, the paradox of the difficult and bringing into the light is especially soothing and strengthening, helps us hold whatever is there, a time of being with a disability or illness or prolonged pain. It's also really beautiful. And then Lori wrote in 12-Step Recovery, there's the concept of handing it over to God, higher power. That's the surrender I was referring to. Is this the Behira point you're pointing to when we've done the footwork to the best of our ability and then we hand it over when it's too hard to solve it all ourselves? How would you answer that one, Susan? So,
Yeah, there's another complementary image to that, or another question I think that's arising for me, which is just because you cast it into the fire or the furnace doesn't mean that there's not still work to do.
right.
Does the fire need to be stoked? Who's going to pull it out of the fire? Right? Like how do you know when something's ready to come out of the fire? Right. So I think those questions kind of figuratively point to where do I have control and agency? And where have I handed something over? And we could think about this a lot too with how we ask for support or we delegate things in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a direct answer to your question, but that kind of spurred yet another growth of the image for me of, oh, well, I've cast it into the furnace of fire, but in other words, going back to the golden calf, Aaron could have said, whoops, made a mistake. I think I'm going to take that out. Right? So there are different choices that we still have, I think, even after we hand something over.
Yeah. I'm just going to also, before we end, I want to put in the chat, and maybe Rachel, if you don't mind, putting the link to the source sheet again in the chat so that people will have this. Because we didn't really dwell on this, but the Midrash also brings in that verse from Proverbs
Mm,
about, I think it's Nishmat Adam
yes.
near Hashem, right? Near Adonai. Is that it?
Mhm.
Um, that the human spirit is the lamp of God, which makes that beautiful connection here with the menorah of lifting up that lamp and experiencing it as, our soul, our spirit as the lamp of the divine. Um, so I have one more question for you, Susan, which is, um, this is a question that if that's because we have different lights. We have the near tamid also, which is part of this, right? That there's a light that's constantly lit. But here there's the instruction to lift up Bahala, literally like light the wicks until the light rises of their own accord, I think is how Rashi understands that Bahalotcha, the lifting up of the lights. Um, I have one more paradox about a light that's always present versus lights that we have to kindle in some way.
Mm.
And how do we deal with that? Like, because we have both in this mix here, right?
Well, the interesting thing with the near tummy, the eternal light, is when we encounter it, we might feel like we haven't seen the lighter of that flame, or, you could carry out the analogy, the person who changes the light bulbs in the synagogue to make sure that the near tamid in our contemporary synagogues, is on. And so I think there can be a sense of when we don't see the lighting, we don't sense the dynamism, right?
Hmm.
Because we don't see like the candle being lit, it going up, and then we don't see it burning out, right? At the end of the Shabbos candles, how they just,
Right.
right? And so one of the things I take from that is when we encounter a light that is fully lit, to think about who made that possible, right? And we can kind of think about this community like, okay, we're here and the Zoom's going to close. And wow, what are all the moving pieces that made
Mhm.
this possible that we don't think about? And so I think the dynamism is always there, but it's easy to become inured to it when we just see, oh, there's a great light. And it's like, oh, that's awesome. And then we keep
Mhm.
moving, but we don't know all the pieces that go into making that light burn bright.
Yeah. Well, once again, we got another paradox there about appreciating the light that's, pre-existent and that's always there, and the effort that's involved in making it visible. Um, Thank you for that, Rabbi Susan Leider.
You are welcome, Rabbi Mark Margolius. It's always a
Okay.
pleasure to
All
be here.
right. Really wonderful. Thank you so much. This was, as Susan just wrote in the chat, a really beautiful and luminous teaching and practice today. I'm very grateful for that. We need it. So thank you so much. And thanks to Rachel, of course, for holding us today. Thanks to Andrew for sponsoring today's practice in honor of Deborah Wiss, and grateful to you, Andrew, for that. And we'll see everybody tomorrow to practice with Cantor Care with Spencer Shapiro, everyone. Be safe and well. Many blessings till then. Take care.
Bye-bye.